Welcome to Level Table Live, Level Legal's monthly legal services live stream that dishes up breaking news, hot tips, and personal stories. I'm Joey Sieber, CEO of Level Legal. As usual, I'm joined by Daniel Bonner, our Director of Client Solutions. And welcome,
Hey, Joey.
Daniel.
Looking forward
Happy
to it.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's not too late. Never too late.
I don't know. I think once we get in the 20s, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But I'm glad that we're here, and we have an exciting guest, somebody that Daniel and I have known for probably a decade, if not more. And so today we're going to talk about Hub and Spoke, Gibson, Dunn's Diana Feinstein, and the new model legal team. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm a little jealous of, like I said, I'm jealous of your news reporter venue there, but I'm here in my office, and thank you for having me.
Well, Diana, we're glad that you're here. By the end of our time, I think we'll cover the critical hub and essential spoke of the modern legal team. You're going to provide that expertise for us, some do's and don'ts for building the team, guidelines for legal professionals at all career stages to become ideal team players. So we're very glad that you're here.
Well, I'm glad to share some of my war stories and tips. I hope that people find them helpful. And just obviously, anytime I get to spend with you guys is good time. Although this time we're not eating. So normally, Joey, we go to nice meals, but I'll get some good breakfast after this in honor of you.
DoorDash is going to be there in 17 minutes.
We're looking forward to it. Just before we jump in, 2 housekeeping items. First, we are recording this, so if you would not wish to hear in any manner, please drop now. You can always reference the recording later. Secondly, we like interaction, so put your questions in. We'll answer them here live, or if we don't have time, we'll follow up after the broadcast ends.
Great. Let's jump in. Diana, I'm gonna run through a brief introduction. So interrupt me if there's anything here that is not accurate.
Okay.
First of all, born and raised in LA, and Diana, I think you always wanted to be an attorney, right?
This is true. Ever since I was a little girl.
All right, and I did your undergrad at Penn and then law school at Georgetown.
Yes.
Worked for Gibson Dunn for your entire legal career.
That's right.
Correct?
This is home.
But you worked in 2 very different places. So you began, I guess, in the New York office and moved then back home, closer to home, and worked in the LA office, right?
That is correct. Family came a calling.
There you go. But civil, criminal, regulatory teams around the world in some of firms' largest and most sensitive matters, right?
Well, some would say yes.
Yes, you have. I know.
Stuff. Yes.
But before we get to all that, to our main topic of building great legal teams, something Diana is known for, let's go back to you always wanted to be an attorney. Tell us about turning 13, what that meant for you.
Well, turning 13 in my tradition of was raised Jewish. I'm Jewish. I was a bat mitzvah. My theme was time warp. Each table was themed different eras in time, including the future. And the future, Diana, is a lawyer, a caricature of me holding the scales of justice in one hand and a briefcase in the other. Oh God, I don't know. You guys have a photo. Is that a photo? I don't know if you all can see that.
Yeah.
That's me. Year 2015. I was a lawyer in 2015. I was a lawyer for many, many years by that point. So, it was, I guess they say if you make your bat mitzvah center table, a centerpiece, a lawyer, you have to be a lawyer. So as I said, it was always written in the stars for me.
That was never in doubt.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a bat mitzvah. That is a San Fernando Valley style bat mitzvah through and through. Proud of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great story to start out, and I think it gives our viewers a flavor of you and your determination, and kind of always been following that direction. episode, or what we're in this conversation, we're going to be talking about how to build successful legal teams. Maybe it's obvious, or maybe sometimes not. Why should attorneys focus on the roles and characters in their teams?
Well, I think the success of how a case will play out is in large part due to the teams and how the teams are managed and how the teams are put together. So it's important to have the right mix of people, both from a personality perspective and from a skill set perspective. And then it's important, it's one thing to build a great team. It's another thing to maintain a great team. So to me, these are things that one of the first first matters I worked on in the firm happened to be a larger matter that was cross firm, people in LA, at that time I was in New York. And I saw firsthand how important it is to build and maintain a great team. And then I've just kind of been drawn to those matters going forward. And I guess it's a skill set I'd like to say that I have honed over the years. And it started. We're now. I talked when I was 13. I also was like student body president, for example, right? So I've always been somebody who likes to organize people, get people together, and have them all row in the same direction for a successful goal. I've lost sound there.
Sorry, what's that?
Oh, there you go. I couldn't hear you there for a second. Now I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Dana, just jumping in here, use the hub and spoke metaphor here for our title as well. What do you mean by hub in the sense of teams?
Well, every team needs a hub. I've learned over time it's important not to be a single hub. Hub to your wheel, and then all the spokes are obviously the different, people and parts of a team that make up the whole, right? So the hub is the leader in the middle who kind of has a sense of stuff that, doesn't always have the deepest layer of information on each of the areas of the spoke, but is making sure that there is somebody in the center who understands enough about everything to spot issues as they come up, and make sure there is a cohesive and unified approach and strategy overall to the matter. And that is what I think is, key is, it's important to have somebody who's in the weeds enough to be in the team in the trenches, but also have enough vision to be able to see where all the pieces fit together and how best to line them up to achieve, winning, in this case, obviously in my role, legal strategies.
I appreciate you sharing that. So we're talking about hubs. Tell me more about the spokes and the wheel analogy.
Spokes are the whole enchilada. So look, it just depends on what kind of matter you're working on, right? So I sometimes manage and work with teams of, 25 other attorneys, including like 20 associates, right? So they're all the spokes, and you want to make sure that, they know enough about what is going on overall, because you don't want to be having, and I've learned this firsthand, you don't want that hub, that person in the middle ideally you don't want it to be one person. Depending on how big the team is, maybe, or smaller size, that's doable. But for really large matters, it's there's only so much time in the day. There's only so much that one person can take. I've learned that firsthand. So as much as you want to be in the center, it's important that you are pushing work out into the spokes and making sure that then it comes back into kind of that hub, and then you get that cohesive, unified strategy. But it's important to make sure that you kind of build those spokes with the right people. And at a law firm, that'll mean, obviously different varying levels, junior associates, mid-level, seniors, paralegals, right? Third-party vendors, I'm sure we'll get to that. And then, so you need the breadth of experience and then the expertise, right? And so, maybe you're going to have a set of people, and I've seen clients now who are organizing themselves this way too, much more like document discovery focused. And those people are kind of in one area. And then there's focus, more of the legal briefing, admin law, legal team Obviously, these things need to intersect. That's why it's essential that you have the right people, not person, depending on how large the matter is, at the center to make sure it kind of all comes together. But the spokes are made up of all the different, and even partner, right? We have different partners who have different expertise, experts, right? You'll have people come in and really focus on some of the expert work. So those are your spokes, and they are essential to the process. They keep the wheel moving.
Agree 100%. So specifically with respect to the associates, how do you identify those types of individuals and their specific skills early on?
Well, my experience at the firm, we have a kind of a methodology here called the free market system. So nobody is assigned work, even as an associate. They ask for work, they knock on doors, they pick up phones, they email. And likewise, partners or senior associates will go out to people that they have heard of by way of reputation. So, certainly at the most junior level, if you've had a strong summer associate year, that news trickles up. I also find that the associates who, knock on your door or reach out to you for a lunch or a drink or whatever, in my experience are, usually the go-getters, but the go-getters who also deliver, because they understand and appreciate that this is in reality, like all of this, the building a great team, it all comes down to like interpersonal, I think, interpersonal connections, which have certainly been impacted with COVID and people not coming to the office as much. Here in my office, I am fortunate I live close and I'm here every day. And I harken back to when I was a junior associate mid-level. Like I can't imagine how I would learn how to be a good lawyer if I was not in person, observing and engaging with senior associates and partners. But this is the new world we live in. So lots of Zooms. But anyhow, I digress. Where were you guys? I totally lost myself.
Just talking about
live,
identifying
so I can ask
the skill sets.
Oh,
hadn't
the
even
picking of good
mesmerized,
associates.
Diana.
Yeah, I mean, like your reputation is everything you have. So from a summer associate program to knocking on those doors, and then obviously like anything else, like once you've worked with someone that's good. I mean, if you find someone who's really, really skilled and you also work together well from a personality perspective. Again, my firm's free market system kind of breeds that, because then you go back to them more often, they come to you. So, first impressions, I can't say enough how much those matter. Not to say that, they can't be overcome, but in my experience, that's how I build the right team at least at the junior level.
That's interesting. Obviously, there's the core competency, the hard skills, and then it sounds like there's some branding and marketing strategy as well.
Yeah. I never thought about it that way, but I guess you're right. Internal marketing. Yeah. I mean, look, there's soft skills here that are pretty hard to teach. Like it's just the reality. And so people can be the top of their class in law school, but if they don't work well in a team, that's not going to take them very far at our firm or any firm really, or in any endeavor, quite frankly. But really, like, again, when I'm thinking about these very large cases that I've helped, lead over the years, the standouts, the ones who get the best experience too, right? The ones who are in the room when we're interviewing a witness or we're having a client strategy conversation from junior on up are the people who have more of those soft skills.
That's a great tip. So we're talking about teams, and obviously complex matters include internal and external resources. We met in a third-party vendor scenario. Can you tell us about how you vet potential providers for outsourced services?
Sure. So, so Level Legal was thrusted upon me, actually. I didn't choose them. My client wisely chose them. And I'm so grateful to that client, forever grateful, truly. So sometimes that happens. We don't have a choice. And sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't work out. Luckily for us at Level Legal, you were going by a different name then, that worked out splendidly. But I actually take the opposite approach from like where I'm encourage associates, who want to get to know me or work on my matters, knock on the door, send an email, cold outreach. I actually don't like that from vendors. There's just too much coming at me, quite frankly, and I'm not special. They come at anyone in a firm. But so for vendors, I really go to, has somebody at the firm used them, somebody at the firm who I know well, or has good recommendations, more of that type of introduction is much better than in a cold call. And yeah, I mean, that's just been my experience. And then, again, this is similar to the associate, right? If you do a great job that one time, that first time, it sticks, right? So, I mean, we should always be striving to do our best work for a variety of reasons. But in terms of a vendor, I mean, one bad project manager, which I've never had at Level Legal. I have not been paid to say any of this. This is all completely my own personal view. I'm not speaking for the firm, I'm just speaking for myself. I've never had a bad experience with any project manager or anybody at Level Legal, but I have worked with other vendors in the e-discovery space and experts, for example, and it's hit or miss, and all it takes is one miss, and you never want to use that vendor again, even though they may be a great vendor. So anyway, I digress as usual. What's the next one? Hit me.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask a non-scripted question, and that is, how confident do you have to be in a vendor for you to recommend it to a client?
Very confident. Yeah. So I would not feel comfortable recommending to a highest recommendation is I've personally used them, obviously, right? And then I'm kind of one of those people, this is my way in life. My husband always says, he always prides me on this. If you do a great job, for me, whether it's as an e-discovery vendor, whether it's as a waitress at the restaurant, I go out of my way, if you do a stellar job, to call you out. And if you do a bad job, I also go out of my way to make sure that's known. Let's just put it that way. So I'm an equal opportunist. And so for me to recommend someone to a client, the top is if I've worked with them and I can give my own. Otherwise, sometimes there isn't somebody at the firm who's worked with somebody, and it's a bunch of vendors the client has told us to consider. And for cost reasons, we need to go with somebody, who I've never worked with, but is, dramatically less money. And I just try my best to vet them. And I mean, part of it's a gut feeling, it's just like interviewing anybody. It's like, are you connecting with people? And if you can find that people are connecting with you on a personal level, like we spend a lot of time on these cases. Like I'd much rather spend it with people that are enjoyable to engage with than, maybe they're experts, but they're like really difficult to work with. Yeah, so that would be my
sense. Yeah. So we talked a lot about the hub and spoke model. Thanks for amplifying that. What kinds of teams do you recommend that model to?
Well, I think it can work in any legal context. Obviously, as I mentioned, I think earlier, the hub and spoke is that kind of model is important for large matters, particularly matters. And these are the matters that I tend to work on where you've got an intersection, parallel proceedings, right? You may have a litigation, a securities litigation, and an ongoing criminal regulatory investigation, right? And so you need to be making sure that you really have an eye on everything, and there's lots of moving parts. And how is, one decision we make over here on privilege going to impact, the potential litigation down the road? But, it would curry us favor with the government if we were able to tell them this information. Like, you just need to be able to think through all those different kind of, if I do this, then what's going to happen here? So to me, certainly these large matters that have, 10 plus attorneys and staff working on them, certainly I like to think of matters in that way. And as I mentioned, in that scenario, you do not want to be a single hub. You want to make sure you have, at least more than one person in the hub. But I think Smaller matters, where it's just a partner and an associate, obviously this model is not really relevant. It's really about teams. So any matter that requires, more than 2 or 3 people. And when I think it's also important, when I think of a team, it's more than just the attorneys, right? It's the assistants who help the attorneys that can help us on the matter. It's the paralegals. It's the level legals and the expert firms and the trial graphics firms and the jury consultants. And I could keep going on, and the court reporting, so it's all those people as part of the team. And, look, what's really unique about law is, we have clients that will have like project managers that, they're a company selling widgets, right? But they've got a project manager in there whose sole job is to make the trains move and organize people and make sure people are talking. Law firms aren't set up that way, right? So you need to develop attorneys who have those skills, who are able to, manage people, manage vendors, manage support staff, and also deliver legal strategy, legal skills. So it's, I think it's an important skill. It's one, again, I've said I pride myself on, but it's not for everybody. Some people really prefer to just be writing a brief in their office on their own, and that's okay. But for the larger matters, you need to make sure you're including attorneys on your team who have this skill set.
Diana, as I'm listening to you talk about your approach, I think maybe your superpower is in building teams and leading. So when did you first begin to develop your kind of approach to teamwork?
Well, I mentioned student body president. So I guess it started in high school. And in my sorority, I was like a couple of different things in my sorority. But honestly, at the firm, like I learned from others too, right? One of my closest friends and mentors, she's now a sitting judge in the Eastern District of New York, taught me, she was, for my first year, taught me many of the skills that I still find myself practicing today in terms of legal teams. And it's, a combination of, she was strict, like she wielded authority. She was very senior associate then. But she also, and this isn't just because she and I became dear friends, but like she was also a real person. And I found that, at the firm here generally, everybody is made up of real people. And so she kind of brought in like a really strong work ethic, important to have some structure to the team, but also like we're all in it together. If I was there working through the middle of the night, she was there working through the middle of the night. You don't, unfortunately, maybe until you're very, very senior, you don't really graduate from that. And I think that that's part of what's building a good team. And I learned that from her is, I'm one of you. Yes, I've had many more years at this and I can make the calls on these things. And you need to respect me. She was very, on that. But we're all part of this. And I think another thing that's really important in building good teams is keeping them informed, right? So even if I'm giving a summer associate an assignment, right, who doesn't need to know all of the case background in order to do that assignment, I find it helpful to give them more context. I feel the same way when I hand you guys over a document review protocol for your team, right, to handle for us. It's really important to give more context. People will do better work and they'll be more invested. It's about getting people to feel invested in the matter. I have, for better or for worse, it's my best and worst quality. I care a lot, right? I care when I am on your case. Like it's, I have 2 little boys and a dog, so it's my 4th child, right? And somehow I find time in there for my husband. So you need to, but you're invested. So I really care.
Right.
And I don't want to be the only one who really cares. I want to create a team where everybody cares, right? And in order to do that, you need to share information and not just keep things, at the senior level. And it doesn't mean inviting everyone into every call, but it means once in a while, like having, a weekly or bi-weekly team meeting to give people updates, give them the opportunity to tell you what's going on, have other people hear what's going on. So again, they get a sense of what's happening. If you don't do that, then people are going to be very task oriented, not invested, and not perform well.
That makes sense. One of the things we talk about at Level Legal, and it resonates with what you're saying there, is that we're, at the end of the day, we're humans serving humans. Yes, we're working for Level Legal, and you're working for Gibson Dunn, and there's an end client involved most times. But at every one of those places, we're working with a human. And I think it's important to remember that when you talk about communication, when you talk about building teams, when you talk about reaching the end goal. We're humans serving humans, and sometimes we lose sight of that.
Well, and I'll just add another thing about building a team. So somebody else I've worked with over the years in my beginning cases, I'm shouting her out, Deb Wong Yang, has been a mentor and a partner of mine for many, many years. She has always knows, whether she knows she's doing or not, the right time to express her appreciation to the members of her teams working on things, right? And it's just the littlest thing, but it goes so long, right? So those emails or even a personal call, or back in the day, you'd walk by someone's office and really thank them for their work. It was an all-nighter, or it wasn't an all-nighter. It was just like, I want to thank you. Like those little, little bits of kindness and gratitude, like, are really important to team morale, and they produce better work product and happier people. And again, causes people to feel more invested in what they're working on. There's a lot of stuff going on in people's lives. This is their work. Right. They have a lot of other stuff going on outside of work. So we have to compete for everyone's attention, and we want to make it a hospitable place to do that. And expressing gratitude is a really important.
Particularly good at here, and he didn't pay me to say this, but I get lots of phone calls and notes. Lots of phone calls and notes from him. Just a small sentiment. It means the world. And Diana, back to something you said, I can speak firsthand about how committed you are and how you help your outsourced teams really feel invested in the matter. So that kickoff call, right, where counsel is describing the matter at hand and the contours and what's at stake and the work ahead, we leave those meetings with you really dialed in, ready to rally. And it's a big deal for the team, especially working in discovery, to feel part of that larger engagement, even if we're playing somewhat of a removed piece from the central legal issues on the merits. So I want to say thanks for that. And it means a lot internally in terms of getting started and accelerating.
I like I said, this is a love fest, Level Legal Diana love fest, but it's the truth. I mean, you guys do great work, and I think it's just important that everyone's dialed in. Everyone's going to do better work that way.
I think we've spurred a question. I'm not sure where I find the question, but I think we have one. Oh, we do have from Peter Bennett. Are you finding it harder these days with certain corporate clients to fully staff cases the way you want, even if it's warranted due to budgetary concerns? If so, how do you go about that or discuss with the client why you need a larger team?
That is a really great question, and it is a really true scenario that is occurring every day. So I think one of the areas where we often get pushback from clients is, we see you having like lots of internal calls, weekly internal calls, right? And we don't want to pay for those. I mean, there were some clients that say they just want to pay for those. And what we've explained is, if we can't have that weekly or biweekly, whatever it is, internal call, then that is going to necessitate multiple individual calls, right, of my time with individual other teams and so forth. And going to what I was kind of explaining at the top of the call, it will result in potentially more money, more hours, not just from those second calls, but because things are not as coordinated. People don't know what's going on, so they may go in a direction and realize, and they didn't realize that some other team member had already handled it. Or so it's just essential to have these kind of, companies now all the time have like all hands meetings, right? We're not saying that these meetings need to be the entire team all the time, but we've received pushback. We've explained that. Hopefully most of the time it works. And we could just bear it out. We could just show in hours. Like if we can't do these kind of sync calls internally, this is how many hours we're going to have to spend doing it an alternative way. And then in terms of like actually staffing up, like number of people, I think the way we sometimes have to deal with that, which people don't always love, and is, not ideal, but is if we're going to have less team members, then we need more of their time. So that means less sharing them with some other cases. So in times we've had to, talk with other partners and clients and figure out ways to rejigger and have somebody spend more time on that particular matter that is more constrained from a budget perspective, because we get more of their time concentrated as opposed to having to split it amongst other more team members. I think it's tough. There's no easy answer to that. Those are just some of the things that come up to the top of my head that we've proposed in response and generally have worked. But these matters are massive. They are really massive, and they take and the other thing is if you have to if everybody would be invested, you could get more out of the more limited people you have. So again, taking some of the stuff I said at the top of the call, if you're doing that and it works, I think you're going to get more productivity even out of a smaller team.
Just to help give everybody a sense of scale, could you talk about some of the larger team sizes you've helped manage over the years?
Yeah. So a recent trade secrets matter that at one point had criminal components to it, also had a patent matter as part of it. I think we had like 35 people at one point. Again, I'm including all the support staff as well. And we were against another firm that I think had a similar number of people that names kept popping up on our emails. A large matter that we did together, legal, and I'm thinking about that had regulatory, criminal, civil litigation, mass action. I'd say another maybe like 25 or so, and then I've got teams of 4 and 5. But those larger ones can get very big.
That's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great question. Appreciate your answer. And so we have more though, Diana. A couple of rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
Okay.
So one thing I'm very curious about, what are overlooked practice of great legal teams? We talked about team specific, but a great legal team. Something that
Sorry, I couldn't hear you there. It didn't come through. Can you say that again?
Sure. So what is the most overlooked practice of great legal teams?
The most overlooked practice of great legal teams. I honestly think it's just getting the people invested. It's just sharing information. So that little piece, if you just take the time, and that's what's always really hard. It's not always easy to do that, but the amount of time you spend getting people up to speed to get back from them actually being up to speed, having the knowledge, being able to do better work, feel invested is worth it. So my advice is, even when things are really crazy and you feel like you cannot bear another minute, and it's just faster for you to do it yourself, stop and take the time, put in the time, because it will pay dividends later.
That's a good reminder. We work on that internally and certainly understand the impact. So speaking of advice, what is some advice you'd give younger associates, knowing what you know now?
My advice to younger associates is to knock on those doors, literally the doors, come into the office, come into the office, come into the office. You will not learn how to be a lawyer as well over Zoom and your phone as you will in person. But also become the master of the facts. If you are the master of the facts and well organized too, don't just know them in your head, but organized in forms of key documents and crons and key players lists and really know that, you will become indispensable to your teams from a litigation perspective, right? You will be in the room, as I mentioned earlier, because you will be needed there. Now, maybe you're just taking notes, but the idea is because if they have a quick question, they want to be able to ask you right then. So become the master of the facts and really find yourself, like, don't just do things in a task-oriented way. Think about how it fits into the overall case. And if you don't know, ask and get invested in your matters. It will feel better. You will actually be practicing law rather than just doing legal tasks.
That's a great word, indispensable. Really good reminder. Well, are you able to share anything that happened that was embarrassing when you were an associate? Any fun stories?
Yes, this one stands out in my mind very clearly. It was my years in New York working with my dear friend who is now the judge in Eastern District of New York. And we were in the throes of it. It was just a crazy, I think we were in some kind of preliminary injunction madness. And I sat at a desk where my back was to the door. Piece of advice: don't sit with your back to the door. Importantly, don't leave the door open if you are going to have that kind of desk situation. I didn't have a choice. And I was on the phone just, really just griping about how much, the senior associate was driving us nuts and making us do all this crazy work, and it made no sense, and just on and on and on and on. And then I heard knock at the door, and she had been standing at the entrance to the door and heard the whole thing. Best part is, though, she just laughed, and she was like, you know what? Glad you just got that out of your system. Like, but I mean, I'll never forget it. Never forget it. I'm going to call her after this. I'm going to call her after this. And I assure you, she didn't forget it either.
You both survived.
Yeah.
And you have a good relationship.
Very good relationship. Her daughter was my flower girl at my wedding. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That was fun. I appreciate you sharing that.
All right. Well, I think that we are. Daniel's giving me cues here, Diana. I think we're at the end of our time. I appreciate you joining us for a discussion of the hub and spoke and the way that you manage teams. I think we did a good job of covering the critical hub and essential spokes of a modern legal team. Diana, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I appreciate you giving up your time.
Of course. Anything for you guys. Thank you so much. Yeah. And have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.
We'll talk soon.
So if we didn't get to your question, we'll answer those offline. For more information like this, please visit our website, levellegal.com. Please join us for the next Level Table Live in February. Keep an eye out for more particulars on that. In the meantime, if you're going to Legal Week next week, please drop by the Level Legal booth. We'll all be there. And we look forward to seeing you. We're at booth 3006 in America's Hall 2. If you have more questions, please reach out. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.